Hi,
Hi, GM.
GM. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I think we just have one more guest coming in to join us. But yeah, welcome everyone. This is CoinGecko's 33rd meetup. I was hoping we could do this in better situation, but here we are, and we just gotta go and continue. It's been a while since we met everyone, so hope everyone is doing okay. The theme for today's meetup is the state of crypto markets in 2026. I think very timely for us to talk about this. My name is Zhong. I'm the head of research here at CoinGecko, and I'll be the moderator for you today. Um, Before we begin, I think I just want to thank today's sponsor, MEXC. One of the largest exchanges out there. So thank you, MEXC, for making this happen and for us to continue to host this meetup. Um, yeah, I think I just want to make sure uh, we introduce our guests today. I think with me today I have three important guests. I am hoping the third one will join us. So we have Vugar Usi, who's the COO from MEXC. Welcome, Vugar.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us here. And of course, I'm very glad that we are supporting such a great initiative and making sure this meetup is going on and more people are joining us.
No, thanks. Thank you so much. And we also have Ollie from Probable. Probable is one of the newer prediction markets that's out there. So one of the very happening spaces in crypto today.
Hello, everyone. This is Ollie. Yeah, I'm one of the builders at Probable, so super glad to be here today.
All right. I think while we wait for Chris to join us, I think we can sort of begin and talk a bit about how everyone is sort of feeling right now. I know it's not a good time. So if you've just woken up and had a glance at CoinGecko, or you'll see that the price of Bitcoin is at about 69,000, right? And that's after hitting a very staggering high of 126,000 in October, just in October 2025. So not even that long ago, but yet here we are. And then just wondering, I guess to Vuga and to Ollie, how are you guys feeling? Where do you think the market is right now? What is your read sort of the mood right now? And maybe Vuga can start. Yeah.
Sure. I think from someone who represents an exchange, I always say that as long as there's a market movement, people who are smart enough, they know how to earn, whether it's the shorting, whether it's longing, whether you are doing a leverage trade. But as a person myself, I'm a very deep Bitcoin maximalist in my heart. Definitely dollar cost averaging, like thinking a long term is a one important strategy that I've been advocate for so long. But for the people who know me from BitGet times or even being crypto times, I've worked in media, I've worked in other exchanges. And one thing I used to always say that there's always a good opportunity to buy and a great opportunity to sell. Locking in your benefit, making sure that you take profit is a very important lesson. And I think we've been learning it from the cycle to cycle. I think the smartest people out there, ones are not only just getting rich on paper when it's all-time high or getting poor on paper when the market is down, but actually if you're able to kind of lock in your profits, take some profits and go do some fun things for yourself, whether you have to travel or whether you want to invest in really interesting projects or do something else like investing in gold and diversifying. I think this is one of the most important lessons we can learn from the cycles of the market, that there's always an opportunity, a good opportunity where to enter the market and exit the market. Therefore, we shouldn't be kind of being pessimistic where the market stands today. Think about where the market is going.
Yeah, thanks Vuga for that. I think that's sort of sound advice for everyone, right? Which is you need to sort of know when to sort of take profit and sort of put that to good use, right? In your real life. Yeah.
And let's not forget, like if after like a 3 weeks, Bitcoin goes to 100K, the same people who bought today at 69, they'll go out and brag. But if Bitcoin goes to 40, it will be the same people who are going to go and cry. And therefore, like, we don't know where the market goes, but wherever it goes, like it was the same, right? The people who bought it at 17, 18K, when it was 120, everyone was bragging and showing their fill order screenshots. maybe today's a day where you take that screenshot and keep it. And if the market goes to the top again in 2, 3, 4 months, you'll be the smartest person who made the right decision.
Yeah, I think probably good to take a screenshot now. Ollie, what about from your end, from the probable side? What are you guys seeing on your end?
Well, I think like we're also a part of the industry, right? So we're also pretty much seeing the same thing. Price is really depressing. I actually stopped looking at prices entirely, starting from a few months ago. But this time it feels like a little bit different because it's not just about prices, but it's also about mind share, as well as also about talent in general, right? I haven't heard that many friends telling me that, hey, I'm leaving crypto, I'm going into things like AI or robotics. So I think there's definitely something that is going on out there, but this kind of like reminds me of what happened last cycle when Bitcoin was at like 20K or 25K. Like it just got so boring. Everybody stopped looking at the charts. Like everybody just got so depressed. But as long as you kind of endure the entire process, you DCA gradually, just like Vugar mentioned, I think the future is just going to be more promising down the line. And with things like regulatory clarity, we have more interesting protocols coming into the industry. I think it's just going to be getting better and better. So yeah, that's just my take. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess from the prediction market, and do you see a lot of excitement and interest in this sector, given it's really one of the hot and interesting things right now?
Absolutely. And I think like people are not just betting about things like crypto, right? Like of course, a hero market for us is people betting on things like whether Bitcoin would go to a certain price or what is going to happen. But in general, we're seeing a lot of also interest in things like financial news. We also are seeing a lot of things like in sports, even for things that like I'm not personally like very familiar with, like crickets, with like badmintons, and even for boxing, right? So these are some of the things that a lot of people are starting to get interested in, and the prediction market is just the perfect instrument for them to express their opinions or express their conviction to, right? So I think that's kind of like something that's very interesting that is happening right now.
Yeah, I think Super Bowl is coming up, so there's definitely a big slate of sports that's gonna come, and that's gonna be interesting. I'm just checking if Chris, are you able to hear us? Can you, yeah, and have you been able to join us? Because we see you on the screen. Okay, maybe not yet, and maybe Chris will be able to join us. He's the CEO and co-founder of Plume, right? And I think we really do want him to also chime in with his perspectives, because you can hear us. Maybe you can try to say something, and we'll see if we can hear you. Yeah, but yeah, I think Chris, we'll get somebody to reach out to you, but we're just gonna continue on. I think Vuga and Ollie, we, regardless of where the price is and stuff like that, and I think Ollie hinted at this for a bit, when we were talking. So like a lot has happened in 2025 as well, right? So and we saw, I think lots of regulation being passed. We saw the industry make seemingly a lot of progress, but at the same time there were not so nice things that sort of happened as well. I'm just wondering, I think from your perspective, do you think we will look back at 2025 and reflect on it as sort of like this is a year where the industry fundamentally grew or fundamentally changed, or this was just I think someone was saying actually 25 was like a bear, but it was just masked by all this like institutional flows, and we sort of should have already gotten a dump earlier. So curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, maybe I can start first here. So yeah, despite all the DATs and stuff, right, I still think overall it's a win, in the sense that there are a few like very interesting things that even for myself as a builder, I feel very personally. Like one of them is definitely like perp dexes like Hyperliquid or Lighter. Like I feel like the technology has gone so good that it even feels even better than TradFi. Like imagine that you can just do like a 50x or 60x on assets like Bitcoin. It's something that is totally unheard of before, right? So That's something that I feel like it's getting product market fit. And the second product market fit, I feel like it's kind of getting more solidified is like stablecoins. And especially when we see institutions or even players like YC, like Y Combinator, they started to pay their startups that they invested in with stablecoins. I think these are some of the very exciting things that like shows that like stablecoin has finally gone beyond from just a toy into something that they can really rely on as a financial infrastructure. But then of course, like I'm biased because I'm building on a prediction market. So I also feel like prediction market is getting something that is going mainstream right now. Like last year, it started to catch some attention, started to catch some engagements there. But this year, despite the price actually going down, we are seeing a lot more actions going on. So I think that's also a sign that this is finally going to be a real thing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ollie, and thanks for highlighting some of the larger developments in 25. Vugar, what about you? What do you think is sort of do you think it's been a fundamental shift in 25?
I love how Ollie covered more of like a crypto native, crypto head aspect of the like a trading. For me, there are like two key developments that I think were like a big wins for the industry. First and foremost, the way I think crypto was first time started taken serious, whether it is by the regulator and legislators in a global stage, or candidates winning the presidential elections, both Argentina, in US, and many other places with the crypto narrative, and actually financial institutions embracing the crypto as a real tool, whether it's Wall Street using it for hedging, whether it's banks issuing their own stable coins, and large giants like a PayPal and others like getting on board with the whole idea of putting things on chain. Second aspect from the crypto in itself, the crypto native companies, mainly exchanges, we saw a huge shift that is kind of a shift also in a narrative where more and more we start not only addressing and talking crypto to crypto people, but we actually kind of start enlarging the pie, whether it is through tokenized assets, it's a real world assets coming in place with stocks, with gold, with silver, more opportunities. And for me, the biggest win of the 2025 was first time we start using crypto as a retail tool, not to trade, but to actually spend money. Almost all large exchanges came up with their PayFis, QR code payment systems, crypto cards. That is kind of, for me, is the last chain to build this full life cycle where you can live on chain. You can have your money, you can invest, you can do savings. And if you want to buy a coffee or, order a food for yourself, you can definitely tap your crypto card or scan QR code and be able to pay with that. And I think that is two major wins of 2025 that will be continuing the whole momentum in 2026, especially with all the large exchanges from MEXC to BitGet, from OKX to everyone else becoming trade everything platform, where we try to become a true challenger of the status quo and making sure that we can directly compete with your neobank, with your banks, but also with the tools like Zero Fee. We try to compete with the DATCos and all the decentralized tools where kind of we just become this blurred mass in between connecting TradFi with the DeFi.
Nice. I think you mentioned tokenized assets, and I'm very happy for that Chris is able to join us. So welcome, Chris. Chris is the founder and CEO of Plume. And Plume Network is obviously one of the larger RWA platforms, RWA chains out there. We were just talking about 2025 and looking back at the year, and whether you notice some fundamental shifts within the industry, or certainly like I feel like a lot of shifts happen outside the industry that eventually affected it.
Totally, yeah. I mean, 2025 was an insane year, and sorry for being a little bit late. My machine was kind of acting up, but thanks for having me, and excited to talk about everything. Yeah, look, 2025, big year for crypto, and also one of the worst years, in a long time, right? Like I think everybody was expecting, and myself included, right? An insane year for price action. We had a lot of things behind us, right? We had sort of rate cuts. You have, we have a very friendly administration. The whole country and the whole world is kind of turning in our favor, right, for crypto. Yet the sort of sentiment and price action could be worse, right? And so it's all of that. But I think really, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to look back at 2025 as the year that I think a lot of what Vugar was saying was correct. Like, I think it's the year that crypto became sort of too big to fail, right? In the sense that, a lot of the things that we've been talking about for a long time began to breach beyond sort of crypto native, right? Sort of, I think 24, you're looking at a lot of like meme coins. You're looking at like it's very insular crypto activity, and it's more shifting narrative to narrative. Right, classic sort of crypto hotball of money stuff. We're moving around from one idea to the next, but the sort of net dollars in is not growing, right? And 25 was the year that changed, right? And you see this happening across many dimensions, right? I think, like everybody said, prediction markets, obviously with Polymarket and Kalshi and many others as well, right? Coming in. And becoming a sort of like, a bridge beyond crypto, right? And I think that's really that's a year of growth for the industry for us, right? Where you're bringing people from like non-crypto native industries actually coming in and talking about this thing and abstracting the crypto element away, right? I think payments and really stable coins as the underlying factor behind driving this, right? Stable coins. And, really what that leads into is, the second half of stablecoins, where we play a lot, was tokenized assets, right? Stablecoins are just another form of tokenized asset. Is the most successful one by far, right? And the strongest one. But you see as a result, we had the tokenized treasury, come a long way. We have all kinds of things right now, like equities, all kinds of different, even other wrapped assets, right? Like I consider Athena a tokenized, like a sort of like classic RWA, right? It's just tokenizing a hedge fund, tokenizing a trade, but there's that as well, right? You see Maple growing really well. For us, we had a good year too. So there's a lot of these types of things, right? Where you're sort of growing and changing beyond what everyone's considering a sort of crypto native assets, right? And of course, I think, like you said, every exchange, both centralized, decentralized, everybody now is doing this sort of like tokenized equities. That the everything exchange, right, is going down that fashion, and everyone embedding payments and earning, right? So I think just having a few of these narratives. Even privacy came back, right? We're talking about ZK again. We're talking about we're talking about ZK. Talking about Zcash. All these things are sort of happening that we've been talking about for years began to become a thing, right? Regulation and all the things kind of bundled together. And so I think it is the core where you sort of cross from crypto is a thing, and it's unclear where it's going to crypto is inevitable, right? Now, all the different ideas behind it begin to really spring off in a different way. And I think it's still some time before it really takes off. I think, stable coins to me is the only dominant story that continues to be unanimously accepted. But these other areas, tokenized assets. I think you look at you look at prediction markets, look at payments, you look at all these other aspects are really starting to shine as well. So very, very important year for us, even if price and sentiment could not be worse.
Yeah, and I think on that note, it's also important to talk about, I guess, things that perhaps we thought was going to happen, or perhaps we were hoping were not going to happen. Also, some of it came to fruition. I was just wondering, I guess for people on our panel, like what were some of the lowlights as well of 2025, and for you guys, and maybe Chris, you can just continue on that.
yeah, totally. Look, I mean, so at least for us, for Plume, like we took the token out in January of last year, and so like I remember this year very, very clearly across every dimension for the lowlights and all the negative things that have happened. I mean, man, it was an insane year. It's hard to articulate how insane it was. It started off in January, right, with a bang, with the president of the free world, deciding to launch a shitcoin, and not just one, but two of them, right? And so like that's never happened, and that was an insane moment as well, right? So I think it was both both a highlight, but then followed immediately by sort of a low light where liquidity's all sucked out of sexes, right? It goes into a bunch of these projects, and it's sort of like it's one of the last, in my opinion, moments for memes, right? In a meaningful way. And it just really goes to shit after that. So from a memes perspective, right? And the trenches are like trenching for whatever, it becomes really, really problematic after that. And like, liquidity just kind of dries up. That's number one, right? Number two, low lights again. I remember these moments because I can look at the chart. I remember exactly what these things happened. Number two, I think you look at something like Bybit, right? And the largest hack ever, right? That was definitely a low light, right? Now, I think Bybit did an amazing job, right? Coming back and like, we don't even remember it at this point, right? For the most part, which I think is a testament to how they both handled it, and also everyone else coming to support them as well. And so I think it was just a huge moment of positive moments, but still, like, obviously just a crazy moment, right? For that entire situation to happen, and the way it happened, even involving SAFE and all these things, it starts to, it really brings into question a lot of things that are happening, right? That someone like Bobby can still get hacked is very scary. So I think that's the second thing. I think the third very clear thing is 1010, obviously, right? And everything that happens there, right? I think the effects. I mean, I think everyone's seen that tweet now, where you look at the price of sort of BTC equities, gold, and blah blah blah, a bunch of things, and we're all tracking similarly, right? On 10 it happens, and crypto just deviates from side, right? So like, it's impossible to talk about that with the biggest liquidation event ever. You know, everyone learns these three words, ADL, right? Everyone begins to talk about ADL and all kinds of nonsense, right? And so like that moment was a huge defining moment as well. You know, again, it was sort of many firsts of, and the biggest of that happened to the downside as well. So just an insane year from that perspective. You know, we also saw things. You know, I would say a lot like, you know, simple things. The last one I'll say is you know, we've been talking about the rate cut literally the entire year, right? And it happens in September, and nothing happens really. We have the slightest, you know, like the smallest price action, the smallest bit of price action from there, not what people expect. And then immediately after, whether it's related or unclear, but right after 10 happens as well, it just sets it off. And so, you know, I won't say they're related, but just like, you know, just timing wise, it was just notable that we were all sort of preparing for that, right? I remember people we're in Singapore and token, everyone's, you know, excited. We get the news, great, nothing happens, and then a couple weeks later, biggest liquidation event in crypto history, and like, you know, just sideways and downwards after that. So I think all these things are sort of like, to me, the three major like lowlights of the year. And things that might have happened, even they happened, we didn't expect. We knew Trump was going to come in place. God bless, didn't realize that it would tank the markets, and all these things that happened. You know, and so I think that's like the sort of like, in my opinion, the lowlights of the year, and also things, you know, sort of like exact same thing on the upside, from the upside, but this way to the downside.
Yeah, I think you hit on some of the largest, I guess, sort of negative events of the year. Just wondering, like, you know, Ollie or Vugar, you guys want to chime in as well? Yeah, Ollie?
Yeah, maybe I can offer from a kind of crypto native point of view, right? A few things that I realized didn't work out as expected. One of them was some of the social apps that were promised to bring in mass adoption. Like, and people, and most of the approach for these crypto apps are just, you have an app on iOS or Android, and then you do gas abstraction, and then you also do things like fiat on ramp, and you kind of expect people to come to download your app and trade from there, right? But turns out like there just wasn't the adoption that they expected, because simply people just didn't have a reason to trade those things. So I think that's the first learning that the industry kind of learned. They need to have a reason to trade. And the second thing that I can think of was things like SocialFi. Like in the past, like a lot of SocialFi companies that raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and it just didn't work out because the industry, or the kind of like the crypto circle as a whole, was just too small, that it wasn't simply enough to kind of have that network effect for these products to take off. So I think there's a saying in a circle that like people underestimate the depth of crypto, but they overestimate the breadth of crypto. I think there's also some kind of truth in there. So yeah, that's my take.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, I think SocialFi, and I guess the other one that I think we sort of had to say goodbye to is InfoFi as well. After X sort of turned off that avenue. Vugar, what about you?
I think Ole and Chris like covered everything bad that happened, and I think there's only one thing left to mention today that everyone was expecting it to happen, and because it didn't happen, it's I think the low light of the year, and I think that was an alt season, because I believe everyone trading and watching online was waiting and giving million reasons why alt season should happen, and unfortunately it didn't happen, and I don't believe it will happen ever again. But still, for everyone watching, especially if you're holding bags and it's too low, I hope alt season does happen in 2026 and you bag some profits. But I think that is the one thing that we are kind of not being able to see anymore in terms of this cyclic or manic, just everything going up. Rather, like as Ollie mentioned, like for example with ZK, we realized that actually when you are able to put a good product in, even after a couple of years, the prices can go up, but that manic hypey price up and downs are no more that we will be seeing. And I think it fuels mainly because today, if you look at any large exchange, whether Binance or Bybit or Bitget, like 80% of their trading volume does come from the institutions that buy and sell. And definitely institutions are not interested neither in our coins nor in the small meme coins that is out there. While exchanges like MEXC, where more than 90% of our 40 million users or trading volume does come from the retail end. And it's a very different story, but we shall accept the fact that it is becoming more and more the institutions game or big players game who dominate the market, and therefore probably altcoin is one thing that we might say buy in a couple of years.
Let's sort of like dive into that a bit, because I think you touch on, Vugar, one of the big themes, which is institutionalization, right? So more and more institutions are sort of getting into the game, participating actively in crypto now. So they're not just trading, but they're also building products. They're launching tokens, some of them, and if they're not thinking about, if they weren't thinking about it in 25, they're definitely thinking about it now. I'm just wondering, I think, perhaps you can talk about it from your perspective, and what you're seeing definitely in the in the centralized exchange space, right? How that has shifted the market for you. And I think you alluded to that a bit, but just hoping you could elaborate a bit more. Yeah.
There are two important aspects. Like first, we have to understand the mindset of a retail user is much different than an institution, right? Retail usually come to an exchange or trading platform to capture the best out of the profits. Probably they'll be going to very high margin trades, and all this is with the incentive to making more money. While you're in an institution, you are not chasing 10x or 20x, because usually you are there to do much better than inflation rate. You want to hedge against the stock market, and the trading techniques you use is much different, and your goals are very different than the entire market. You try to play it as safe as the industry gets. Secondly, I think what makes institutions robust is the amount of investment they can do, whether it is building the right trading tools, whether to have this algorithmic trading infrastructure that definitely the retail user is lacking. It's not possible to do, even with the implementation AI, that it's not going there. And lastly, let's not forget, again, retail user is always there with a lesser knowledge, is there with a much slower speed until we go to, I don't know, crypto Twitter or any other source where we get our information, try to make the best outcome in there. While I think like Ollie can enlighten us more on this. This year we saw how an insider was able to conduct so many profitable, unmistakable trades, right? I know that like last time they liquidated in their full portfolio. There was even speculation that it can be the President Trump's son. But anyways, like I think last year we saw more and more institutions and the people who have an insider knowledge were able to conduct a much smarter trade rather than a retail user, which makes a very unfair advantage. And I think that was one of the key reasons why we see so many liquidations, because the entire crypto market went from 3 trillion to 2.5 trillion last year. It means the industry in itself got very small, but also we saw much increase in the number of the whales or the bags that whales hold, especially when we look at Bitcoin. It's becoming like more and more consolidated on the hands of people who have much wealth, people who have enough money to manipulate the market in itself. I think that is becoming one of the core issues, where institutions, they don't only act as a single party who trades, but they also have enough resources to actually liquidate or do maneuvers. We have seen several also the scandals happening between large exchanges and the market makers who were able to manipulate the market. We have seen so many projects getting delisted exactly for this reason, where the users were liquidated unfairly because the insiders had too much information.
And do you think that is sort of a turnoff for retail, or it sort of makes the market a much more difficult or challenging place, or just less fun, I guess, in general?
I can give you two answers, like an answer from Vugar as a person and then as an exchange representative. In my personal opinion, I think that overall, like we are all happy for institutions, but the idea of Satoshi's white paper was about the peer-to-peer transfers, payments. It was about cutting the middleman, and today we celebrate middleman coming. And if we literally zoom in with all these institutions coming, except the fact that things now are on chain, nothing much changed, right? The same market makers that did the stock market making, they try to get exposed here. Same banks try to offer you exactly the same remittance, but now on blockchain, it is cheaper for the bank, but it's still the same cost for the user. In my opinion, there isn't any advancement. From an exchange perspective, I definitely believe like it's much better to have institutions because it brings a lot of money, it brings a lot of opportunities. But downside, I think in a couple of years, we will be seeing that where there are platforms, like where the retail is true the action point, where the retail is majority. And then there will be large platforms where institutions dominate and there the retail is becoming kind of a just background. And I don't know like if it's appropriate to tell it here or not. For my friends who love going out and partying, it kind of reminds me these clubs where you have rich people with the tables and opening unlimited bottles, and then you have a lot of like a GA people who are there just to make the party fun.
Okay. An interesting analogy there. I think Chris, I mean, you deal a lot with institutions, I'm sure, and it's a core part of your business and what Plume does. So maybe talk a bit about it from your perspective. How are they
Totally.
Sort of coming to this market and approaching this blockchain and crypto thing finally?
Yep, totally. No, I think I echo a lot of what was just said about institutions. From the Plume side, look, maybe just to give context, right? Plume, we build a network and an ecosystem around RWAs and tokenization, right? We're the largest, largest sort of user base, largest sort of diversity of assets, for tokenization in crypto right now across everything from things like Tokes and Durian farms down to funds like Apollo and Global, Apollo and Wisdom Tree or BlackRock and all these things, right? So that's the idea and what we do. So we deal a lot with the institutional side of things, right? Both from institutional crypto, right? And then non-institutional, non-crypto institutions. And I would say, looking at the year and kind of where things are, it was a big shift in 25 around the mentality of it. Really, it kickstarted from one moment, right? It was around this time last year, maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, last year when Larry Fink was the first time he got on TV and said, tokenization is going to eat everything, right? And that's probably the seminal moment in everything. And that spawned all of the activity and the follow-on work today that's happening around tokenization and around sort of institutional adoption of crypto, right? Because that was said, BlackRock is one of the largest asset managers in the world, right? With multiple, I think it's 12 or 13 trillion dollars, right? So BlackRock in itself is, multiple size, is larger than all of crypto from an AUM perspective, right? So when that guy says, we're all going to tokenize everything and everything's going on chain, right? Everyone else listens. And so as that was a single moment, right? And you sort of saw Biddle, their money market fund, right? Offered through Securitized directly, offered through Ondo and these types of things, right? Come on chain and begin to suck in a bunch of TVL. Right now, it's still relatively small comparatively speaking to a lot of other things, right? I think it's topped out maybe 3 or 4 billion right now, right? So not bad, right? But as a result, every other major financial institution in the world began to act. Right. Now it took a whole year, right? I remember, in the beginning, it went from nobody cared to Larry Fink cares. And because Larry Fink cares, within about a quarter or two, everyone begins to talk about it. Right. And so you have most of the large financial institutions in the world, primarily on the asset issuing side, right? Basically trying to bring their funds on chain, right? For them, it's a path that they, they're keeping it very simple. It turns out, I was very surprised. I remember talking to both BlackRock. I remember talking to Apollo, talking to a few of the large funds out there. And I remember thinking, these are large, classic American Western asset issuers, right? Trying to bring their assets to another geography, another place. And I remember thinking, okay, I've talked to them a lot, thinking about compliance, thinking about things like AML, thinking about things like sort of user rate. All it's going to be a big important thing and an important topic for them, right? And I remember getting on the phone with them, and I remember heard they say, Chris, the truth is like we don't give a shit. At the end of the day, I remember thinking like if there's at least 20 million on the other side, then we're willing to play. And I remember thinking, okay, so they really are like institutions are here, and I remember thinking, in the way that you'd imagine they're here, right? They're also here just for the money, and there's really nothing, there's nothing else to it yet. And so that's kind of how it shifted in the first half of the year, and then as the second half of the year, as the initial deployments sort of came and went, right? And you saw the rise of maybe Apollo's ACRED fund, the private credit fund, begin to take a lot of steam behind it, which is, sort of a continuation of Biddle, right? You have a 4-5% APY fund that really became as sort of the backbone, right? Of a lot of it. Now shifting a little bit further up to 7, 8, 9, right? Percent APY as people searching for yield in higher places and to get more comfortable with tokenized assets and RWAs. And people deploying that and begin to figure out what you can do with it. And at that point, the institutions are sort of like changing it to, okay, so it's not just, now we think about bridging, now we think about custody, we have to think about these types of things. And so as they begin to think about expanding and growing beyond just an EVM chain where they're just deploying and have a few foundations that buy the asset, right? And they want people to actually use and engage the product through retail and through other channels, right? And through, things like today, you can do things on us with Morpho, you can do things with sort of what you see Euler do a lot of stuff, you see Camino and like all these other products, right? Begin to be able to take these assets and loop against them and buy them, make provisions. Nest, our product today, is one of the biggest out there as well. So as people actually engage in these products now, right? Now these institutions are realizing how to think about growing their AUM or for them TVL, right, on chain. And that's changing a lot of the dynamics right now, where you're seeing now, maybe I should spend on my own stablecoin, right? Or maybe I should spin up my own chain. You're seeing a lot of that right now, right? Most of them, to be honest, most are nonsense and most are going to go zero, but they're trying at least, right? And the thing about bridging a lot, right? Thinking about things like that, right? Thinking about and this sort of ecosystem around it, right? So the institutional side, right? So maybe you're talking about like an S&P, right? Or a Moody's when you're talking about now rating these assets and bringing them on chain. And so our sophistication around it, both traditional side as well as crypto native things to support the institutional adoption is really beginning to come into play now. So the first half of last year was very much people are talking and beginning to think about it from an institutional angle. The second half of last year was, okay, now let's begin to like really get into it and try to use these assets. And as a result, when someone starts to bring in, we had simple example, Grove came in and bought the ACRED fund. It's just a single customer. They did 50 million into ACRED on Plume, right? And you see them doing 50 million into other things, into a Galaxy CLO on this. They did $1 billion into CLO on ETH mainnet, right? So the money really comes that way. So I think the dollars in is still very crypto, unfortunately, right? I don't think we've seen like new inflows, right, from the institutional angle yet. But you're seeing new assets and supply come in, which at least is elevating what can happen within crypto. And then as a result, you should see a reflexive side where it goes back to the institutional side, and that should bring in more supply and more demand on the asset side as well. So that's kind of where we're going right now. It should be a big year in front of us as well for this now, but we're still very much in the growing phase of it. Where we, I think about inflows at the end of the day, right? And I don't think that has happened too much yet, but it should be around the corner.
Nice. And do you think that's just a fact of like, you have the issuers who sort of got comfortable with, I guess, the tech and stuff like that, but you also need the investors to sort of get comfortable as well, custody arrangements and things like that?
That's right, exactly. I mean, it's really two things, right? At the end of the day, you have to think about the motivation for the institution. At the end of the day, the institution does not care about any of this, is the real answer. Right? As much as we'd like to think they care about the technology and everything, they do not care. They are very simple creatures. They want to grow AUM. That's it. Right? And for them, this is a new channel, a new path to do this, a new way to reach new members of the world, new audiences. And they're thinking about how to do that. Today, the numbers are nominal. That's why. Right? At the end of the day, right? If BlackRock's a $12 trillion AUM asset manager, right? A $2 billion money market fund on chain for them, which is built the most successful one out there, is not a thing. They do not care. Right. And it's not even remotely worth the time yet. Right. And so it's a bit of a push and pull where they first have to. And it's the thing that we've talked about at Plume for a long time. What they need to do is bring the asset on chain in a way that shows some meaningful traction that allows them to go back and say, now let's bring more of our money in. Right. And bring our customers more relationship. And it's not only. And so it's both sides. It is interesting because you have to both bring in the cash from the crypto native aspect, because that's who's here today, to show that it's worth something. But once it's worth something, it'll be then about adopting the technology and showcasing that for them to bring their customers in, right? That's why privacy is becoming a thing. That's why all these narratives and stories are becoming more of a thing. That's why the sort of like payment story is becoming a thing, and settlement and cross-border payments and all the things we've talked about around tokenization from a technology, around crypto from a technology standpoint, are becoming a thing. Right, but it's the interplay of those that will then allow them to bring in their asset allow them to bring in their customers' funds and bring a net influence of dollars, right? And it's up to us in crypto to sort of make sure that we shape this in the right way for the user within crypto and the retail user within crypto. Otherwise, I think just like you said earlier, right, we're just going to replicate all the nonsense we had last time on chain. It's the same shit, right? Just that we were trying to eliminate the middleman last time, right? And I said, now we're welcoming them in. I think it was a great point, right? Now we're welcoming them in and we're very excited, right? I think there's a whole conversation about DTCC and all these things, right? I think 2 years ago, nobody even knew what DTC was, right? And now we're like, sort of DTCC, crypto great, is going to tokenize everything, blah, 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 right? Where they very literally are the middleman. I'm not saying good or bad, right? Because I actually think it's an opportunity regardless. But I think the important thing for crypto to remember, the crypto native to remember, is that if we, right now, it is still very much on us. We are the demand side of the equation, meaning we have ball control. right? Sort of in this relationship as we bring more of the world on chain, right? And if we cave too much and sort of allow these sort of trad folks to come in and shape crypto, right, the way they want it to be shaped, and sort of be lured into a false promise. Everyone thinks when the institutions are coming, it means money is coming. Right now, it's not true. It's still our money. It's the same thing. They're just bringing their assets in, right? And so if we allow that to shape the assets and shape how we're doing things in crypto, it's a huge missed opportunity for us, right? And it will allow us to sort of, it will force us back into where we are today, where we're still sort of like middlemen up, that we don't have ball control. And the promise of crypto, where retail drives adoption, right? And you have this fervor and this manic energy, right? Which is the beauty of crypto, right? Incredible speed, velocity of cash, the liquidity, all of these things are the great elements in the 24/7 nature, the global aspect, all of these are the benefits of crypto, right? We need to retain that aspect so we can help take these institutions and shape them in this way. That will not only make it more successful, so they'll want to bring more in, but number two, it'll stay true to sort of our philosophy. And so I think it's the right move go-to-market wise for us, and structurally for us, as well as philosophically. So, I think that's a really important piece that we're sort of like teetering on right now. We'll see where we land, in the next year or so. But I'm hopeful for us that crypto will do it right.
Thanks so much. That's a great perspective. I wanted to come to you, Ollie, because you're more crypto native, and wondering how you think about these institutions coming into play, and whether you start to see a bit of that on the prediction market side as well.
So I think as a crypto native perspective, right, I definitely want the TradFi to buy my bag. I think that's the first thing that I do want, and but I feel like the outcome isn't really as what we expected, right? We're hoping for $1 million Bitcoin, but what we have right now is like 70K or less, so pretty devastated. But then on the second thing, which is whether or not like I'm seeing institutional adoption for the industry that I operate in, which is prediction market, I honestly feel like it's still a little bit too early, in a sense that the capital efficiency of the protocol designs, the way even for some of the like topics to settle, right? Whether or not the Fed will increase, hike the rates for 25 bips or something like that. It's still a little bit like a toy right now, if I'm going to be honest, right? So I think if the institutions were to come in, like they want to kind of invest like 250K, I think it is still going to be a stretch even for the biggest players like Polymarket. So in this case, I think there would be probably like maybe 1 or 2 years ahead of what we still need to kind of build more in order for us to kind of capture institutional demands for when it comes to prediction market. But I do see some appeal when it comes to these institutions to come over to kind of participate in prediction market. Is it just gives them a lot more flexibility or a lot more variety of ways for them to express their opinion, other than just expressing on price alone, right? And I think like you can bet on things like whether this news is going to happen or not. You can bet on whether the rates are going to hike or not. All those things, basically, if you have an edge, then you potentially can bet on it. And I think that's kind of the beauty of prediction market.
All right, thanks for that. So perhaps still early days, but maybe we'll see a lot of progress this year or in the near future as well. Let's like switch tack a bit. I think talk about what's dominating the news these days, at least from an asset class perspective, which is gold and silver. I never thought I'll be sitting here talking about this. Certainly in 24 and 25, I think when gold started rallying, none of us cared, right? Because Bitcoin was doing way better, and now we all have all are looking around and seeing like, oh, where do we get gold? And everyone is sort of launching some sort of gold product. So maybe wanted to talk a bit about precious metals or commodities now back in vogue, and like how is that affecting you guys as products? How do you guys think about this? And sort of maybe if you have a perspective of why sort of Bitcoin has fallen behind a bit, I guess, on these things. And Ollie, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, so for Probable, we still see most of the activities still happening in Bitcoin, because apparently our user base, our crowd is mostly crypto natives as well, right? But then we also are seeing people emerge, like some topics starting to emerge. One of them definitely is things like commodities, like whether or not gold prices going to a certain dollar or silver or even things like uranium. Just people just want something to kind of bet on it, right? So we're seeing some action starting to take off in these type of commodities, and the intersection of this and also with these commodities is actually financial news, which is also something that we see a lot of activities are going on with, like Fed decisions, with even for Feds in Japan, those decisions are something that people will actually bet on. So I think these are the kind of like the very adjacent categories that we see a lot of actions, and I definitely see like this is definitely going to be something that will continue as prediction market gets more developed.
Thanks for that. Vugar, what about you guys? I mean, gold is making a comeback, and
I think before to answer this question, we need to kind of draw a clear line of what is betting and what's actually trading, right? If you are going to do a prediction on any live event, even the price action, it is definitely a betting. But what actually having a real world assets or tokenized synthetic commodities on the platform, from the platform perspective, it gives upper hand both for the platform and the user. For user, the upper hand is that user first and foremost can make a fast decision, can decide to diversify the portfolio, or whenever gold goes up or Bitcoin goes down, they can move their money within the same platform. Especially at MEXC, we offer 0 fees. It means user can get exposure to tokenized stocks and gold and silver with 0 fees, similarly to our entire spot market, making sure that they can, with the help of one click, they can trade, or let's say technically swap between the assets, making a user to do the most smartest decision at that particular market movement or particular market moment. From the platform perspective, this allows us to maximize the user lifetime value, because especially when you operate in such a centralized way where acquiring a customer is really expensive, and it's not only about the marketing cost, it's about cost that we put on the compliance, KYCs, everything literally adds up very quickly. And once you invest so much to onboard the user, you definitely want to maximize the lifetime value. We come back to the same kind of a narrative of the super apps, the same way our app that started to order a taxi today, we can order food from there, almost get our prescriptions filled and many other things. Similarly, I think we are becoming to this like a unified platform super app approach, where it is your investment super app. You can do everything from buying, selling, and investing. When it comes to gold and silver, I think it helped to most of the TradeFi platforms the same way they were able to offer Bitcoin or crypto assets, right? Your Revolut, your Monzos, or your any neobank. Today, we are able to go back or like kind of heat back, telling that, okay, now we can also offer the stocks here. We can offer the tokenized real world assets. We can offer you synthetic commodities and precious metals. And lastly, from our users' perspective, I think we came to realization, even though you are the native crypto head, right? You came into investing with crypto, Bitcoin, or any digital asset was your first investment opportunity. Today, you don't much care about the asset itself. You care about the market movement and how you can maximize on that. For an average user, it doesn't matter if they're trading gold or Bitcoin. There isn't much conviction in the short term. There is an aspect, how can I make more money? How can I make more money now? And that's why we saw the rise of any sort of an asset. That's why I believe we see the rise of the prediction market. That's why we see huge demand on very high margin trades. There are people trading with 100, 200. At MEXC, we offer up to 500 times leverage because users, mainly crypto heads, are very hungry in terms of doing 100x, 10x, 20x. I remember 3-4 years ago, if you go to any conference, people will talk about next 100x. 10x was, like a loser kind of a return on investment. And on the other end, if you came from a traditional market, you know that like a S&P 500 goes around 5-10%. For you, like an 20-30% return is already great. And I think we are kind of in a convergence of these two aspects. What is a good return on investment and how we can still maximize what is coming from the market. And lastly, what it gives to the stock market, I think it gives the stock market to opportunity on exposure to the Gen Z and young people that never touched the stocks. They never knew that, they could call your bank and have a broker, or they could invest in the stocks. Now they can do it with the blink of an eye. And I think that is kind of win-win situation for everyone. And at the end of the day, especially when the market is down, people don't much care where the money is coming from. As long as that money comes from, they don't care if it is the gold or Bitcoin. It is just a ticker that they are trading. Because we are not talking today, especially on the tokenized assets aspect. We don't think about, long-term conviction that these people truly believe that gold will go, I don't know, or their dollar cost averaging gold for next 5 years. I don't think that that's even happening. And I believe there are still people who are very bullish on Bitcoin in the long term. And I believe in a couple of years, when we zoom back, we will still see that, Bitcoin is again doing much better than gold, than real estate, than any other asset class. But in today's kind of a last 2 months, last 2 weeks kind of a frame, we see that people don't much care about the asset itself. They care where the price is going and how they can maximize.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair comment, and certainly I think we've been getting a sense of that as well. The attention span is shortening, and so is the conviction, like you said. But certainly I think perhaps these are just phases, and we live in certainly uncertain times. Coming to you, Chris, I think with gold and silver, so how is that affecting you guys? Do you guys have to rip up the plans now, and everyone's got to try to follow gold now?
So fortunately for us, like, it's all happening and tracking exactly the plan. We're one of the first to sort of like XAUT with Tether's gold is not probably, it's the biggest gold product out there. But we have we have the Matrixport AUM. We're one of the biggest biggest sort of like users of Matrixport gold in crypto right now. And so we've had gold for a long time. We've had uranium, we've had silver, we've had these things, and so it's sort of tracking right along to now. Did I think that it would go this way? No, I can't pretend that I sort of knew we were heading this direction. So sort of an accident of history, but it is all tracking the plan for us, thankfully, on the RWA side. At the end of the day, we've always said that one click to be able to own anything in the world, right? And use cryptography to understand and know that you're actually holding that asset is an amazing thing. Right. And even for us, I think personally it's been great. I hold a bunch of like tokenized gold right through this. And so it's been good for me. But yeah, like I think I think to the points that I mentioned earlier, I think it is the point where it's like the truth is most people don't give a shit about the asset. It really is. Crypto was a venue where you could, without thinking, without knowing much, without doing anything, hit the 100x, right? And that was the promise. And so, that used to be alts, right? RIP, I guess, and then we rotated to memes, right? Because that's where entrenching, and that's where it was. And then now rotating into, like, it turns out, 100x, is not, it doesn't really matter if there's no liquidity and you can't actually pull anything out, right? So like, let's go to where there is anything. And so what you're seeing now is combining deeper pockets of liquidity. Where is the real money? And then at the same time, adding perps on top. It is funny, like perps, had a big year, obviously, with Hyperliquid. I think probably one of the moments I didn't talk about, but like obviously Hyperliquid was sort of a seminal moment for crypto in general, where, one, first good real airdrop in a while, God bless. And number two is just seeing the adoption and the usage across that and sort of decentralized first, and really seeing a DEX for the first time, right? A DEX, quote unquote, I guess still, but relatively speaking, more decentralized than Binance, right? And SEX is like really compete with SEX, right? And have, really high volume as well, right? And so I think you look at that and the combination of things, the downstream effect of Hyperliquid was everyone's throwing perps on everything, right? Which, again, was something we talked about a lot at Plume as well, which is, sort of being able to take leverage across many things and express ideas in different ways. That's ultimately what this is, right? And to me, leverage is just, it's a number for a conviction. Right. And so if you're a very strong believe asset, being able to lever up in a very, very simple way, in a very capital efficient way is a really incredible. I think prediction market is another way to sort of express ideas. Right. And so I think crypto, it largely is the ability to express an idea in very, very simple ways, and through a single click, whether it's a tokenized hedge fund, through things like Athena, right? Whether it's through prediction markets, opening up avenues, new ways, whether you're doing it because you actually lose something or you're insider trading, whatever it might be, but there's something there. Right. And then third, obviously, through deeper pockets of liquidity. liquidity. That's why the trad asset has become a thing, right? And so that's kind of, in my opinion, that it's the confluence of all these ideas coming together. And I think it really is something. I've been writing this post where sort of like, basically everything is crypto now except crypto, right? Meaning like the AI markets, right, are going in an insane way, right? You're sort of seeing how, even subtle things where even fundraising and all kinds of stuff, like, it's sort of taking the shape, you're doing these cards, the very classic crypto fundraising cards are sort of everywhere in AI now, right? You're doing a lot of launch videos for everything. It's a lot of hype and narrative and nonsense, right? As well in the sort of trad markets, whereas crypto is becoming very like PayFi, payments and stables and all kinds of, we're talking about regulation and things like that. And so I think you're seeing the confluence of those types of ideas come together. And that's why you have trad, you have sort of traditional assets like gold, silver, you've got perps kind of enter the mixed prediction markets all over the place. So, and stable coins. So the commons of these things is really, really coming together in a crazy way.
Yeah, and I think with more perps coming into the picture, that's also I think why we're seeing more liquidation events as well, because people tend to want to lever up to go for that 100x. I think I just wanted to ask some more specific questions to each of our speakers. I think Ollie, let's start with you. I think prediction markets still new on the block, but definitely last year was major growth, 4 times I think to about 63 billion in notional trading volume. I'm just curious. I know we talk a lot about the retail investor and sort of the crypto native, just not caring about the ticker, just looking for a place to sort of bet. And what do you think that's what's driving this shift to prediction markets, or what do you think is sort of the factors that's going to drive the growth in prediction markets this year?
Yeah, so I think one of the primary reasons why like prediction market has a kind of like appeal immediately to a lot of like crypto folks, if not like even the general masses, is because it's a really horizontal and it's a really kind of like a generic product for people to express their opinions or express their bullishness on. And like I said, like if you want to convince someone to be trading crypto, you need to first teach him what is crypto, right? And you need to teach him like why you need to be bullish about crypto, and then here's an instrument for you to trade. But the beauty of like a prediction market is basically it's very tied into someone's normal life. Like we watch a sports game, you look at you watch the news, you just live your life, and then you must have something that you have an opinion on already. If not, you have something that you have conviction on. And prediction market just gives them a very efficient tool, if not a really interesting tool, to allow them to kind of express these opinions, right? So, but then like I feel like right now if I'm gonna be like, my take is that I feel like prediction market is still a little bit nascent right now. Like we just started. I think right now, if I can do an analogy correctly, it feels like an OpenSea moment right now as an NFT OpenSea moment that is compared to what we're having right now for prediction market. A lot of people just launched and they're still trying to find a niche. They're trying to find an edge. And right now the market is still exploring on different types of ideas. But I think sooner or later there will be some players like Blur that is coming into the market and they kind of disrupt the entire space by just offering a much more superior product, a much more seamless experience to the users that really care about the product, right? So I think that's something that we as ourselves at Probable, we're looking forward to, and we're trying to have lead this change. But I sense that the market is definitely going to be heading towards more type of specialization in terms of the types of markets that they're going to bet on. Because right now, like if I'm being honest, like poly market is just a little bit too generic, right? Like it offers everything, but then they are kind of like a master of none. So I think the way to win is definitely for other players to kind of join in and then to offer a much more superior experience, like a 10x experience on betting on a specific product. And that can be on financial news, that can be on crypto, that can be on sports. So yes. So that's what I'm thinking of right now.
And maybe Ollie, really quickly, I'm just curious, just because you know this better than I do on the prediction market side. I mean, my sort of understanding of prediction markets is that like a tremendous amount of the volume is just crypto still. Meaning it's just short term, like basically, we don't make money. Like you can't, if you're holding BTC, of which I'm, a proud holder as well, like you've just lost money, right? And so like the only way people are sort of able to monetize crypto now is sort of the short term, like these short term markets around like, sort of like the classic example is like the 15-minute market is BTC going up or down, right? And so like that's what people are betting on for a lot of the prediction markets. And the vast majority of these markets have zero, like not zero, but like they're not real markets in so many words. Sure, there's a market for everything. There's no real action there. You couldn't do anything with size. The pricing is all off. And so really it's still an extension of crypto when it comes to volume. But I could be totally wrong. So I mean, you tell me.
Just I think that's a great question. So it turns out that each of these market players, they probably have something that they're really good at. Like, for example, for Polymarket, they are definitely really strong in terms of live sports. So NBA, NHL, NFL, anything, basically, any type of sports, they're probably the strongest at. And then for Kalshi, right, they're most likely going to be news driven. They're more even they have a really strong presence in terms of crypto stuff. And one of the things that perhaps like some of the niches that the other players have been trying to kind of get a foothold is like things like pre-TG markets, for example. Like what's the token price once something airdrops, right? So a lot of these type of topics, and I realize that most of these different players out there, they probably have their own edge in terms of their product. If not, when it comes to the content sourcing, they are a lot more experienced than someone else. So I think that's already starting to kind of play out. And surprisingly for us, because we are kind of operating as a crypto native exchange, right? So crypto is definitely something that we are the strongest at, but we're also seeing kind of adoptions in terms of like overlapping areas like crypto news, for example. So I think that right now it's still a little bit too early to conclude like who's winning a certain category, but then I think the trend is actually forming there. Yeah.
All right, thanks for that. I guess Chris, I think with RWAs, I think one of the big things that happened last year was tokenized equities, right? And that was supposed to be big launch, a lot of partners, but I think if we look at the volume, it's not really there yet. What do you think is sort of the lessons we can sort of take from this, and what's your take on the most exciting RWA sector we should be watching for this year in 26?
So look, we've so Plume. I think if you go back and look at it, we were probably one of the first to do tokenized equities, in all forms, right? And these are through partners of ours, through Back, through Swarm, through things like that. We didn't tokenize directly ourselves, honestly, I've been saying this for a while, and I don't want to be too like aggressive about it, although I probably will be. But I've always thought tokenized equity is like super forced narrative, to be honest. I was never a believer of it. I'm still not a believer of it, to be honest. Not in a negative way, right? I think it will happen, and I think it's one of those things where it's sort of like is so fake it becomes real. That's like this is probably how I would describe it. Where it's so obvious the volume is fake. It's so obvious the adoption is not real, right? It's incredibly obvious that like there's really no usage around it, right? You can just tell in the flows, right? Now, I can't say on the SEC side, right? It's unclear to me, and it's very possible it's actually very strong there. So I just like to take that entire part of the market off of my thoughts. But like, if you look on chain today, you look at the charts here, you can see the adoption for every tokenized asset growing at the exact same rate. And like that's just not a thing. That's just not how the market. If you look at the growth of any other asset, that's not how it works. You don't have every equity going up at the exact same ownership rate over time, right? Through the same wallets, through the same. It's just like very, very clear what's going on. So I've always thought it was an incredibly forced narrative because I just don't think that the classic world has a lot of a sort of like. Again, we're here to chase alpha. That's 99% of what crypto is, right? Nobody really cares about these things, right? And so, I've never been a super strong believer in it, right? Especially you're talking about super low liquidity, right? You're talking about these, like, that's not what people are here for, right? Now, on the other side, you are beginning to see it might actually become a thing, though, because basically as the rest of the market degrades for crypto, right? And people are looking for more sort of more venues to gamble, right? And more venues to sort of like chase alpha. When you combine deeper pools of liquidity, right, in the trad markets with leverage on perps, right, and you may actually have something that comes together in a sort of pretty nice way, right, and the ability to just, again, I think Vugar mentioned it, like you're just chasing price action, right, and right now that happens to be in metals, right now that it seems like it is funny the minute that the crypto bros pile into metals, we all start to dump, everything starts to, because I think the minute crypto touches it, we ruin it all. So like it seems like that's like what's going on. But regardless, I do think it's becoming a thing, right? But even then today, it's more ways to express the same ideas, right? If you look at tokenized equities, the vast majority of it is a big part of it was just, levered DATs. It was DATs, that was like a big introduction of it, right? People were just trading Bitcoin in more esoteric ways, right? And it was just DATs, unfortunately, right? And then you begin to go and diversify into things like, you're doing a little bit of technology stocks, right? I think Coin was a big one, right? Your Tesla's a big one, QQ, simple things. S&P is another one that's sort of going there. So like, it's sort of like so forced and so not real that it becomes enough, it becomes a thing. And I think the combination, the timing of this with just the crypto, would just be, we're at 69 right now, right? I think I try not to look. I think you've been trying to I try not to look either, because otherwise, it does, send a wave of a depression through me. But if you look at that in common, like, what else are you going to do? Trenching is fucked. The sort of like, even the majors are cucked at this point, right? And it's very clear that liquidity is not even there for the majors. Where else is it going to go, right? And so you could see it happening where it was never real. It's still, in my opinion, not very real, but it is. I sort of hold both ideas. I'm actually still very bullish, and I think it will turn. And I think it will happen. And it's happening in front of our eyes at a fundamental level. So I think you look forward. It's going to be a real thing. Right now, I'd be careful. Some of these assets are just like very illiquid. They're just not very useful. I think it's very hard to actually. I use all of them, right? I think they're actually very hard to use for most of them. Fast forward, it's inevitable that like around the corner, and I'm not talking years out. I think I think we're like right there. This is actually going to be very, very usable, and I can completely see the volume and the attention actually dominating crypto completely with the tokenized assets.
Yep. And Vugar, I think coming to you, 2025 was very interesting for centralized exchanges, right? So obviously, we touched a bit about some of the things that happened. Bybit got hacked. There were a lot of on-chain competitors, right? So Chris mentioned Hyperliquid and a bunch of pub DATCos also popped up. You mentioned a lot of them going zero fee. Obviously the 1010 happened as well, and a lot of the a lot of things, a lot of people worried about SEX doing risk management. But actually MEXC actually had a pretty good year, right? Like for all accounts, the numbers and the volume stacked up pretty well. And you were taking market share away from your competitors. What would you say are some of the things that you guys did right, and what were some of the lessons that you learned from 25?
I think when we talk about Bybit hack, there were like so many great lessons to draw and conclusions. First and foremost, first time we realized that even though crypto is kind of an underdog, it became a national security warfare moment where there was accusation that probably the North Koreans were involved in that hack, and it was more of a security intelligence point rather than a single standing corporation. Secondly, at that time, I was chief operating officer at BitGet. We jumped in and helped Bybit by lending Ethereum. So did Galaxy, Binance, and many others. This was the first unprecedented issue matter in the finance industry, because usually if the bank goes down, what happens, central bank kind of bails them out, or another bank is kind of takes them over. It was the first time that we already knew what happened with FTX, and we didn't want Bybit to go down. Therefore, entire industry came together to save Bybit. Today, Bybit is as strong as ever, and they kept growing and acquiring more licenses. And I think that was a great learning experience in there, that first time industry understood that we don't have anyone else to bail us out. We have to help each other. And lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to my colleague, my dear friend, Ben, for handling the matter in a very professional way, making sure that everyone had a clear communication. There wasn't much FUD going around. There wasn't much speculation, because he was online. He was telling what's happening. And the crisis communication is one big learning lesson for entire industry and myself as a professional. Coming back to MEXC as a platform and our growth, I think I only took over the MEXC 2 months ago, and one of the key reasons I decided to join MEXC because I was so much surprised to see that there is this great exchange that people choose because it is not your first choice, right? No one wakes up one day, hears that Bitcoin is all-time high, and comes to MEXC to buy a Bitcoin, because MEXC never spend much money on big sponsorships. There isn't that kind of sentimental connection. But usually the people who come to MEXC, like the way I discovered MEXC myself was that I wanted to trade certain token that wasn't listed in any big exchange, the exchange where I worked, or like a Binance and Bybit. And I discovered the MEXC. Then I opened the doors of the zero fee trading, and for people who are either you're like a very small trader or very huge whale, that the trading fee definitely makes a big difference in your life. And you come to MEXC because the product is really good. And it is kind of on your way of the evolution, on your way to understanding the crypto better. Since I joined, also the CoinGecko put a great report recently out about how much we attracted both trading volume, user numbers, and also we are one of the dominating players in the tokenized gold and silver tokenized metal aspect. And I think what makes us very robust is that like people who choose us, they know why they are here. They're not here because we sponsor Formula One or any football team, which I definitely want to do in coming future. But today, 40 million users who choose MEXC, they choose because they clearly know what they're seeking for. But you also mentioned the rise of the decentralized world. I believe last year they captured more than 10% of the market share in the trading volume, and they're increasing because demand is definitely there. Still, I believe the barrier of an entry is very, very high. It is for much sophisticated, much educated user. And when if you can put like all the players from like a centralized exchanges, like giants like Binance as your first entry point, and then on the way you go towards your hyper liquids or any decentralized platform to discover more gems, to be more free, or to trade on your own risk. Like MEXC sits in a very sweet spot between where we have more than 3,000 projects listed. It's very easy to come on board. We support the new developers and projects and founders to issue their tokens. We don't charge arm and leg for listing like an other platform. We don't act on a black box, right? Still, we have a very good liquidity. There's an opportunity is there. We have $100 million Guardian fund that if something goes wrong, we will be there for you. And we are one of the very few exchanges that never actually suffered any hack or security breach, making us a really nice place to trade for the people who already know why they're here. They want to enjoy zero trading fee. They want to discover new gems, but also they want to do it within the safety and security of an trading centralized exchange. And they're maybe yet not ready to onboard to your, decentralized journey. And I think that is where we also come in place as an education platform. You might have been coming, to your Binances or OKXs as your first entry point. Then you evolve through the MEXC, and then this is where you kind of embark to the next part of your journey, whether you want to stay here or move. But also, let's not lie to ourselves, right? Today, we all have so many apps and so many browsers on our devices, and for us, changing from platform to another is a matter of 2-3 clicks, and it's always about chasing the opportunity. And I think coming years will be much tougher about the consolidation, about fighting for the user attention and user money. Let's not forget, in financial industry, people don't choose you because you are shiny, you're nice. People actually choose you by putting their money, and it is a very, very expensive journey for everyone. Making sure that someone actually trusts in you and puts their money is for me, the actual sign of the success. It's not about how many users are there. It's about the trading volumes. It's about the platforms where you open, you clearly see who is doing well. And I think that makes us one of the robust players. And lastly, what makes us much different than anywhere else, as I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, that we have around 40 million users. More than 90% of them are the individuals, retail, long-tail customers who trade, which makes us much a fairer ground to trade and play rather than large exchanges where 80% of the trading volume comes from the institutions and retail doesn't have much to say.
Yep. I think we actually went over, so we're at 15 minutes over. So I just wanted to make sure thank all of you guys again. Vugar, Ollie, Chris. Thank you again for joining us. I just want to open up the floor, last chance for you guys. Talk about your own projects, maybe what's coming in 26, and we'll try to wrap up on a more positive note. I think and not look at the number too much. Chris, yeah.
Yeah, totally. One, thanks for having us, and of course, I'd actually love to hear the CoinGecko perspective, because you guys see everything, of course, and I use CoinGecko all the time, and so you guys must have a good view on everything, and you guys are putting a lot of content too. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and like where things are going, and also, but big picture, look. the short story is this, for Plume, we're one of the largest sort of networks and ecosystems around RWAs, right? So we do tokenized assets, and that means anything and everything. We've always been very sort of crypto first in this way, where, our view has always been that RWAs for crypto natives is the path forward, whereas too many of these traditional assets that are coming on chain look and feel like traditional assets, right? And meaning that it's hard to use. They're maybe gated, there's no liquidity, or they're not composable or whatever, right? Most assets today for RWAs, the truth is people like me and you, or like the retailers, does not hold them, right? If you look at BIDL, or you look at these big funds today, and again, I'm not saying these things, it's great. It's still, but it's still early. That's all we're saying. BIDL has about 100 holders today, right? And we know 100 holders in crypto is probably 10 users, right? And I think that's being pretty generous, right? And so that's like the reality of tokenized assets today, right? And so at Plume, we've always been very fixated on this simple idea, right? Which is, I'm still very aligned with the crypto first and crypto native approach, which is it needs to be crypto first. It means permissionless, composable, and liquid, right? Those are defining characteristics of a crypto native asset, and transforming trad assets into that feeling, into that UX, I think is the piece that unlocks utility and unlocks the market and keeps crypto in the driver's seat and have ball control over these markets going forward, and the retail user, which I think is a really important part and a defining aspect, right, of crypto, and more importantly, moving a technology medium, right? When we went to the iPhone, right, we sort of became, the thing that took off was the thing that took advantage of the sort of architecture of the phone, right? You use the accelerometer of location that gave rise to Uber, right? That's what drove things. So if you look at the sort of native architecture of crypto and dynamics of this, it is this sort of 24/7 global permissionless liquid composable asset that matters. So I think if we take advantage of that, that's actually the best path for these assets to grow, and for crypto to stay volatile, and for to stay philosophically aligned to where we want to go, right? And so going forward is this, Plume today, especially one of our protocols, Nest, is the easiest place as a result to go and get access to any RW in the world. Right, so you go there, you take your stable coins, and you can deposit anywhere. Right, it's on our chain, it's on ETH mainnet, it's on other places. We just launched on Solana not long ago. Right, you can go and you push a button and immediately get access to the best funds and the best products in the world. Everything from a sort of the BlackRock BIDL fund, with the Janus Henderson fund. Right, we've got super state assets on there. We have everything from Apollo private equity funds. We've got Wisdom Tree. We have different PayFi assets. All these things. So if you want to click buttons, right, and interact with the real world, primarily from a yield aspect, right, Plume and Nest is the best place to do this today. So we've got, that's why we have one of the largest user bases in crypto when it comes to RWAs in the world. Is sort of the broadest diversity of assets. Again, like I said earlier, you get everything from sort of tuk-tuks, right, and rentals on that side, to durian farms, right? We have camel farms, all the way to the best assets in the world from some of the biggest asset managers, right? So you want to click buttons, interact with the real world. Plume is a place to go do that in a way that feels and looks and smells like crypto still. Bridge over in a way that you already know today. Push buttons, deposit, take those things, put into Morpho, loop against them, lever up, do what you got to do, right? And that's how we sort of think about it. We want to sort of abstract away the real world and make it usable to the crypto native. So, again, really excited. I think the next year with tokenized assets, I think it's very clear a tremendous amount is coming positive in this way, right? And all the things that we want to happen. Institutional flows, right? We want them to buy our bags. We want Bitcoin to go. All these things are around the corner still, right? I remain an optimist, unfortunately, for my financial status, but I remain an optimist for all these things. I'm very much a believer that it's very rocky in the short term as always, right? But if you zoom out, right, and not even that far, right? DeFi's been around for 4 years, right? 5 years. It's not even that far, right? But if you zoom out even the slightest amount, which we are unable to, and myself included, it could not be more up only for us, and it could not be more positive across the world. And so, I'm incredibly bullish on, everything that's happening here. I think sexes have done an incredible amount for us across, and I think there's a lot more to come, right? I think prediction markets are very clearly going nuclear, right? And they're going to continue to go nuclear. I think stable coins and tokenization, it's just, it could not be more clear. Every major country in the world is doing tokenization, right? And talking about this. Every major company in the world is doing tokenization, right? And so the amount of flows, the amount of money, and the amount of things that will happen, right? And this is the same idea with sort of Plume when we started. If all of crypto grows, then all of crypto grows, right? Meaning, as long as we bring things on chain, everybody in crypto will benefit in one way. It may not be how we believe it to be and how we think it will happen, but we will all benefit in some way. So then we focus on that idea, right? We could not be tracking towards a better place. So still very positive, still very bullish for the future.
Thanks so much, Chris. Ollie?
Yeah, and at Probable, our vision is very similar to what Chris just mentioned, right? We want to build a product for crypto for the crypto native crowd, right? And there are a few things that we're trying to do, and the outcome of what we're trying to do is basically become a 10x better product than what the other competitors have been doing when it comes to providing products for these crypto creative net crowds. And I think I can definitely think of a few dimensions to kind of think this through, right? First, of course, is the content or the events that they can kind of predict on. It's just not just on crypto prices, because if you imagine, like, if people all offer is just people betting on crypto prices, then there are much better instruments for them to do that. Like, imagine they can probably do it in perps, they can even do it in spots. Then why do they have to bet on use a prediction market for it? So I think the answer to it is definitely going to be providing more variety of things that people care of when it comes to crypto. It's not just about prices, but it's also about metrics like TVL, I think metrics like TPS, all those things that are related to crypto that allows people to express more opinion into a project, but not just on price. And the second dimension I think of is how we can push our infrastructure to the limits, right? It's like right now, the market is only offering a 15-minute crypto prices on prediction up and down, right? But can we actually push our infrastructure further that we can offer like a 5-minute, if not even like a 1-minute type of prediction, right? So I think these are the type of the modules or type of the experiences that are meaningfully better than what we can provide right now. And right now, definitely it's just not enough. And the third one is as we are kind of, our DNA is more building for the crypto crowd, right? We want our product to be also composable in a DeFi stack. So imagine like if we can actually allow users to kind of use our positions and then to land it in some of the protocols like Aave, and then to kind of borrow USDT from there and earn yield. I think those are the type of things that we want to work on, and we're actually actively working on those to kind of increase our usability, or actually allowing ourselves to be more composable in the entire DeFi Lego stack. So I think these are some of the very interesting things that are happening on Probable. But and I think like definitely we're riding on the right trend. We are building on a product that is getting product market fit. So I think that's kind of like the really good thing that is happening right now.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ollie. I think it would be remiss if you said you wanted faster crypto prices. If I don't mention that, talk to us about our API and and let's see whether we can help solve that for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think last word to Vugar.
I think until Ollie figures out how to build the shortest times on predictions, still you can trade real-time crypto on MEXC for a zero fee, and that is what is our conviction, and we want to double down what we do the best to build the easiest access for the user and make sure that our platform becomes a gateway to infinite opportunities, whether it's discovering new gems, whether it is trading assets that we are very familiar with, real world assets, definitely synthetic and tokenized assets is that what we are trying to build for. But also this year we'll be testing a lot of products in terms of the retail, long tail, whether it is the payments in Latin America or card product that we are co-launching with Ether5 with a lot of spending benefits rather than earning benefits. And I think that is one of the beauty of the industry where we are moving at the moment. We are becoming too mainstream, and yes, a day maybe an average user conducts a couple of trades, but definitely they do tens or even dozens of transactions, buying coffee, ordering commute, and more. And that's what we want to build, a full life on chain kind of a product that is truly zero fee and make sure that users, especially the retail users, enjoys it the most. But I'll be investing a lot also for making sure that the platform is running smoothly, it is safe and secure for everyone. And I'm planning to increase our Guardian fund around $500 million, making it one of the largest 3 Guardian funds there, that all our users have peace of mind when they come and invest their money on our platform. Therefore, if you haven't done so, I doubt you haven't, go check MEXC out. And today we have complete zero fee to all our spot market, more than 200 pairs in derivatives, and also for gold, silver, and tokenized US stocks, you are able to trade with a zero fee. And I think that is the beauty of it. You can just save on your fees on other platform and come and explore new opportunities on MEXC.
Yeah, and I think with that, I think this is a good place to wrap up. And Vugar talked about peace of mind, and hopefully we'll get some of those as we proceed throughout. Thank you so much again to our speakers, Vugar, Ollie, Chris. Thank you to our sponsor MEXC again for letting us make this happen. And thank you all to our audience. I know a lot of you are still listening in, even though we have gone over time. For paying attention. I definitely learned a lot. I think this has been really interesting chat, and hopefully you guys also got something out of it. Thanks everyone, and we'll take care, and we'll catch up again the next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks. See you guys.